So another week of NFL football has passed, and this week was actually normal for once. After the last 2 weeks of literal chaos, this week was actually fairly normal for NFL standards. Most of the teams that should have won this week, but there were certainly some exceptions. This week, I'm going to do my review a little bit differently than I've done in the past. Previously, I would go game by game reviewing and looking at storylines, but this time we're going to do the review differently by using a tier list. I'm going to rank how I think each team did this week. We'll start with the Thursday night game between the Steelers and Bengals. Honestly, a very surprising result. Joe Flacco joins the Bengals, and they end up winning. So we'll rank the winning team first. We'll start with the Bengals in A tier. The reason I don't put them in S tier is, well, their defense was still pretty bad, as usual, against Aaron Rodgers. Look, Aaron Rodgers has been decent. The Steelers' offense has not been nearly as bad in previous years. I'll give them that, but they still allowed the Steelers to put up a good amount of points and nearly threw the game away at the end there. But they do hold on and take the game, which with Joe Flacco throwing for 342 yards, the Unk Bowl, genuine surprise. This is the best the Bengals offense has looked legitimately all year. You would have thought to see this performance with Joe Burrow, but hey, they both have the same first name, so what if one's 40? But going over to the losing team, the Steelers, I'm going to put them in C tier. They put up a good fight, but their defense definitely underwhelmed this game. I mean, the Steelers offense was basically doing everything they could there. But to be fair, the Steelers offense did score a little too quickly at the end. A 2-play drive with 3 minutes left on the clock, not ideal if you're trying to prevent a comeback. But the defense should have been able to step up. I mean, the Steelers defense is supposedly one of the best units in the NFL, and they couldn't hold the Bengals with Joe Flacco, with that offensive line. With the defensive talent they have, that was embarrassing. So, I mean, Aaron Rodgers gave it a good shot at the end, but Hail Marys at the end rarely work out. For the effort, I'll put them in C tier, but the defense certainly drags this grade down, and their record down. Next, we go overseas to London with our next international game. This is the last of the London series, but there's going to be more games in Germany and Spain. But the Jaguars supposedly home away from home, and they get embarrassed by the Rams. The Rams, yes, they are a great team. And for their Rams performance, I'm going to put them in S tier. Why I don't put the Bengals in S tier? Well, it was a close game that they nearly gave away at the end. But the Rams never gave the Jaguars really any chance. Well, actually, they gave them plenty of chances, but they comfortably ran away with this. I mean, the Jaguars didn't score their first points until the fourth quarter. They had opportunities to do so, but just didn't. The Rams, fairly clean win, though, surprisingly, for putting up 35 points, they did not do all that much on offense. Only 270 yards of offense. You do not expect that out of a game with 0 turnovers and not that many yards. All their touchdowns were basically on big plays. So, hey, you take what you can, but the defense played excellent. Anytime the Jaguars got close, the defense stood up. And speaking of the Jaguars, I'm putting them in F tier. That was pitiful. Legitimately pitiful. I mean, they put up 358 yards. They should put up more than 7 points. Cam Little missing kicks, dropped passes, lots of sacks, penalties, missed throws. It was an all-around disaster for the Jaguars. Now, if it was a worse team, I might rank their performance a little bit higher, but look, the Jaguars have some expectations at this point. They were 4-2 coming into this game. They beat the Chiefs. Put up a fight, you know? This was an awful game, and they could definitely use the bye this week. The Rams, they get to rest up a little bit and hopefully get Puka back after the bye, but it's still up in the air if he's ready to go. But Devontae Adams, hey, he looks good. And they're tight ends too. The next game we have is the Saints and Bears. Pretty much the expected outcome. The Bears are overall a better team, and the Saints, well, they play everybody close. Not really this time, though. I mean, the Saints absolutely imploded this game. This was a complete disaster for them. However, they did start to make it close in the end. So for at least that effort, I will put them in D tier. Low expectations, kinda, that's what you expect. The turnovers, the missed field goal, all of that in the first half, it looked like it was going to be a complete blowout, but then they brought it back a little bit in the second half, made it close for a second, then it didn't quite go their way. For the winning team, the Bears, I'm going to put them in B tier. Not exactly the most impressive win. They beat a team they were supposed to. However, this was not the most inspiring performance. First half, they played great. If it was first half alone, it'd probably be at least A tier, but the second half, you made it a little more uncomfortable than it really needed to be, and the penalties, there were a lot of those. Not really the cleanest of games from the Bears, but you take the wins where you can get them. Next up, we have the Dolphins and Browns. This was one of the games that happened this weekend. Not fun at all. There was a total of 400 yards of offense combined, and not a good performance from the Dolphins. The Dolphins, they go in dumpster fire. Clean everything. Just delete the team at this point. That was a horrific performance by the Dolphins. All the Browns had to do was just stand there and watch. And for that, you know what? I'll give them B tier. They didn't do much, but I mean, why did you really need to? The Dolphins kept turning the ball over, and you had short fields, so I don't know. You don't really need to do a whole lot. I mean, 31-6 makes the score a lot more impressive than it actually was, but you know what? Browns, you will take a win, but I'm not sure if you really wanted to win, but somebody had to win this game, and it was the Browns, because they were honestly less dysfunctional this time around, which kind of surprising. Next up, we have the New England Patriots versus the Tennessee Titans. Another game that happened this weekend. Nothing really out of the ordinary. The Titans continue to make a fool out of themselves really badly, but they did get a little bit of hope in that first quarter where they, for some reason, had a lead for actually a good amount of time. Patriots, they did fine. They did what was expected of them for a good team. I mean, they were 5-2 for a reason, so they'll go in B tier. I'll actually put them a little bit higher in B tier. It was a slightly more impressive performance compared to these other two teams, but the Titans, they are going to go in F tier. Not quite dumpster fire because, well, at least they played okay in the first half. I mean, they were only down 17-13 at halftime, so not the worst. But overall, this was pretty bad from the Titans, and I would be genuinely surprised if they get another win this season. Now we have yet another boring game. The Raiders versus the Chiefs. Again, exactly as you expected. But you know what? For the Chiefs, they looked really good and put in their backups in the second half. We got to see a little bit of Gardner Minshew. That's fun. I mean, for this blowout, this is one of the rare ones I'm actually going to put up in S tier, just because of the utter domination it was. Like, it was a very easy game for the Chiefs. They went up big early and just chilled. The Raiders legitimately could not do anything. They had less than 100 yards of offense and 3 total first downs. 3. I mean, I know the Raiders are bad, but come on, that was brutal. Putting them in dumpster fire for that. A little bit higher than the Dolphins at least, but less than 100 yards of offense and 3 first downs. I get you probably knew you were going to lose, but at least put up some effort. Next up, we have the Eagles and Vikings. At least this was better than some of the previous games we've already gone over. I mean, both teams had a pretty terrible first half, but the Eagles always seem to have at least one bad half a game, and that was the first half. This time, at least. It was 14-6 at halftime, but it was an opening drive touchdown and a pick six, and then punts for the rest of the half. And the Vikings just wouldn't do anything. They just kept imploding. And then it got good in the second half, which that's when you want to play your best football, at least. I mean, both teams were starting to score down the stretch, and the Eagles nearly gave it away. But hey, the Vikings put up a fight, and for at least doing that much, I'm going to put them in C tier. Despite the terrible first half, they got close at the end. And the Eagles, they did what they needed to, but that first half was pretty trash. I have a hard time really putting them at A tier for that. So I'm going to put them at B tier, above the Browns, but behind these other two teams. Those two teams played a little bit cleaner than the Eagles this time around, but hey, at least the Eagles seem like they're starting to get a groove again. Again, this was a very boring week of football because we have the Panthers and Jets. 13-6. Thrilling game that I'm sure everybody was excited to watch. The Panthers just stood there and let the Jets fall apart. They really didn't do anything, but honestly, one of the least impressive victories this week. The only winning team I have in C tier. It was that unimpressive. I'm at least going to put them ahead of the losing teams because they won, but this was very unimpressive. And the bad thing is Bryce Young left with an ankle injury, which, funny enough, he's actually been playing okay and didn't turn the ball over this time, which, yippee, we don't have to deal with the weekly turnovers. At least this week, because the Jets don't get turnovers. Meanwhile, the Panthers do, with J.C. Horn doing some very impressive interceptions. So, at least the defense stepped up. The Jets, they go into dumpster fire, but at least ahead of their division rival of the Dolphins, because at least it was a one-score game that they didn't really take advantage of, but wasn't nearly as embarrassing as the Dolphins, but still pretty garbage. But hey, in a weekend of very boring football, at least we had one very exciting game. The New York Giants versus the Denver Broncos. We always gotta love these types of games. I mean, the Broncos were doing pretty terribly for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden in the 4th quarter, oh, let's put up 33 points. Great job in the 4th quarter. That single quarter is probably S+++. Like, that was an excellent quarter by the Broncos. The rest of the quarters were like D tier, so I'm only going to put them in A tier just because of how terribly they played in all the rest of the quarters. But that 4th quarter was excellent. Excellent job by the Broncos in that final quarter when it mattered most. The Giants, on the other hand, I'm actually going to put them in B tier. This is probably one of the few times I will ever put a losing team in B tier, but it was just that impressive. Yes, they did blow a lead, but it was against a quality team, and normally that would qualify for them at least C tier. However, they did enough to win at the end. Just the problem was they gave up one big play at the end that allowed the Broncos to get into field goal range. You can definitely argue that's in C tier, but Jackson Dart came in the clutch. Their kicker did not, and neither did their defense. So in the comment section, I will definitely see people rating the Giants lower than where I have them, but it was an impressive game. The Giants came very close to winning against a very good team, a very good defense too, one of the best in football, and they put up 32 points. That's impressive. You have to give the Giants some credit. Also, it's kind of funny I'm rating them ahead of a winning team, but shows how unimpressive that win was. I mean, if the Panthers put up any more points, maybe I would have the Giants behind them, but I was impressed with the Giants. More impressed with the Broncos, though. That's why they get in A tier, but it's a whole 60 minutes, so I can't quite put them in S tier. A little bit of a less exciting game, but at least it was decent. We have the Colts and Chargers. The Colts, I mean, impressive victory against a very good team. For that, I'm actually going to put them at upper S tier. 38 points against a good defense and basically shutting down the Chargers. That's impressive. The Chargers, meanwhile, they got far too behind, way too early. They attempted to come back there at the end, but too little, too late. Gonna put them in C tier because at least they put up a fight there. I mean, the Colts, they're rolling. They're proving me wrong, and honestly, could be considered Super Bowl contenders at this point. They're winning everything, but they got some tough games down in the second half of their schedule, so we will see if they can keep this up. But so far, they aren't 6-1 by accident, even though they've played some weaker opponents. You have to play who's in front of you, and they beat the Chargers, who is definitely a strong opponent. That deserves S tier. Next up, we have the Commanders and Cowboys. This was kind of an underwhelming game. I mean, the Cowboys offense They rolled very easily. The Commanders, meanwhile, did not have a great game, especially after Jaden Daniels went out. Once Jaden Daniels went out, any chance the Commanders had basically went out the window. And in the second half, the Cowboys just cruised to a victory, but it was still a very sloppy game by the Cowboys. So I'm only going to put them in A tier. This is probably like A plus tier, but because of how sloppy the early part of the game was, that's keeping them down from S tier. Still good performance from the Cowboys. The Commanders, meanwhile, it's tough when you lose your quarterback. They put up a decent fight at the start, but I'm going to have to put them in C tier. It's tough when you lose your starting quarterback and you're missing a lot of your receivers. I mean, the Commanders, their season is about to sink due to all the injuries they have, and that kind of sucks. In the final afternoon game, we have the Packers and Cardinals. Well, the Packers continue playing with fire, keeping opponents close when they don't really need to. The Cardinals are a team they should easily beat, but for whatever reason, they just keep playing teams super close. I think that's a product of their offense. Their offense just isn't performing as well as it can be, and it's allowing teams to stick around when their defense is doing all they can to keep them away. Their offense really needs to improve if they want to be Super Bowl contenders. I mean, wins are wins, so you'll take them. I'll at least put the Packers in B tier. We'll say at least above the Bears, because the Cardinals are a better team than the Saints. So it's understandable why it could be close, but still not the greatest of games from the Packers. Sloppy game, 10 penalties, and then they nearly throw it away at the end. But the Cardinals, meanwhile, Jacoby Brissett, he's been playing better than Kyler Murray, so he may be worth a look, but I'm going to put them in C tier. They got close there at the end, but not enough. Taking that last sack on the last drive definitely sunk any opportunity they had at taking this win, which would have been hilarious if they did, because the Packers, you keep playing with fire, it's going to burn you. Now we have our Sunday night game. The Falcons versus 49ers. You know, after how the Falcons played last week, you would have really thought this would have been a better game, but no, it was kind of whatever. It was a close game throughout, I'll give them that, but it wasn't exactly the highest scoring of games. I mean, the Falcons, they turned back into a pumpkin. Like, this Falcons offense is so infuriating. Like, some weeks they'll put up huge numbers, 30 points against good teams, and then they put up a stinker and put up 10 against a JV squad. I mean, the 49ers have literally all of their star players injured. Well, except Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey got basically all the yards for the 49ers. He had over 200 yards, which is a majority of the total yards the 49ers got, which is hilarious. If the 49ers did not have Christian McCaffrey this game, no shot they would have won. Well, maybe, because the Falcons just did not want to do anything all game. For the Falcons, I'm rating them D tier. This was a very uninspiring performance by them. Like, you have all these star players and they do nothing against a not very good 49ers team on paper. It's all backups. This is a preseason matchup with your starters. But for the win, good team. I'm actually going to put the 49ers up. They've shown resilience. Like, they still win despite having the amount of injuries they have, which you got to at least give them credit for that. Then we have our Monday night games. First game was very much hyped up. The Buccaneers versus the Lions. I mean, the Buccaneers looked like one of the best teams in the league. And the Lions, they lost to the Chiefs, who actually look really good now. Lions win easily, which is a surprise because you would have thought the Buccaneers would have put up more of a fight. But when you lose Mike Evans again, and Emeka Egbuka is playing on a bad hamstring. Why is he playing? I don't know. He really should have just sat this one out. It really made no difference. Probably could have used the rest instead. But the Lions, not exactly the cleanest of games, but good opponent. I'll put them in B tier. Because of how sloppy it is, I'm going to actually put them below the Bears. They did beat a good team, yes. But if that team had any weapons on offense, they would have easily won. But the Buccaneers, I mean, they are dealing with so many injuries, it's crazy. But even then, They were showing good fight before. I'm putting them in D tier. That was a very bad performance from them. And we have the last game of the weekend, which who stayed up for this? A 10 p.m. starting time. The Texans versus the Seahawks. The Seahawks won, I wouldn't say easily, but I mean, they won fairly easily. They tried giving the game away, which that's not great. So for nearly trying to give the game away, I'm actually going to put them lower B tier ahead of the Browns, because at least the Texans are a decent opponent, I guess. I mean, the Texans have been looking better, but they definitely did not look great this game. So I'm going to put them down in lower C tier, because yes, the Seahawks are a good opponent, and the Texans did try to make a comeback there at the end, but honestly, that first half was pretty awful. And I mean, what a sloppy game. A total of 22 penalties and nearly 200 yards of penalty yards. Sloppy game from both sides. Honestly, I should put the Seahawks in C tier, but at least it was a more impressive opponent than the Jets. So, you know, but it was not the cleanest of wins at all. I at least give credit to the Texans for trying to make it close there at the end, but they just couldn't get that final stop when they needed to. And the final two teams are the Ravens and Bills. They were both on bye. The Ravens might get Lamar Jackson back, as well as a few other players they desperately need. They are 1-5, and they need to go. If they lose many more games, they have no chance at their division or the playoffs. And the Bills, they definitely needed the bye to recalibrate. 2 straight losses against teams they really shouldn't have lost to. The Falcons looked terrible this week, and the Patriots now lead the division. So, some bad losses, and they did not look exactly the greatest beforehand either. The Saints game was closer than it really should have been, and they gave the Dolphins some hope for some reason. Look, if the Bills want to compete for a Super Bowl, they need to step it up, because playing close against bad teams and losing against good teams will not help you in the playoffs, nor the playoff picture. Seeding matters, and getting far too behind in seeding really could affect some playoff games, so they needed this bye to rest up and figure things out quickly. But if you guys like this new format, please leave a like and sub. It lets me know you guys actually like these types of videos. But other than that, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!